Good afternoon, Biology 1 students. This is your lesson on macromolecules. Welcome to our food line run on macromolecules, and we're going to start with the four macromolecules that we have, which are carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And so we're in the produce section at Food Lion, right here off of Church Street, and we're right where we see all of the fruit, the apples, the oranges, the onions, the tomatoes, all the things that we're familiar with when we go to the grocery store. And guess what macromolecule we're going to find right here in this section? We're going to find carbohydrates. Remember, carbohydrates are sugars. Carbohydrates are sugars. Carbohydrates are sugars. And in the produce section, you're going to find, guess what? Sugars. So let's just start right here by way of reminder. We have two types of carbohydrates, and they are complex and simple sugars. And if you come over here to this section over here, you'll find some more simple sugars. When you look at strawberries, strawberries are very popular for simple sugars that we call what? Glucose. Glucose is a simple sugar. Glucose is a simple sugar. Glucose is the simplest sugar and is also known as the monomer for carbohydrates. So let's move over here a little closer to some complex sugar. That's the one that we're probably most familiar with and what most people like to really eat. So when we move over here, we're going to find what? Potatoes. We're going to go to the potato section, and we've got yams, we've got white potatoes, and they contain complex sugars. And we call complex sugars polysaccharides. Remember, poly means many, saccharide means sugar. We have many sugars in potatoes. And specifically, the kind of complex sugar that we're looking for in potatoes is starch. So just by way of reminder, we have two types of carbohydrates. They are simple and complex sugars. And just to be mindful that the monomer for sugars is glucose, and you're gonna always be able to find carbohydrates in the produce section of the store. So we've left the produce out, but we're still on carbohydrates, and just wanted to remind you that when we think about carbohydrates, we should be thinking about starches, and specifically the kind of starch that we usually think about is pasta. Pasta is a carbohydrate. So just by way of reminder, but what makes the starch so stiff? What makes it stiff? What makes a tree stand tall? Where does spaghetti and pasta come from? They come from plants. And in the cell wall of plants, we're going to find what? What sugar do we find? Cellulose. Cellulose is the sugar that we find in plants. Cellulose is the sugar that we find in plant cell walls. I'm going to say it one more time so you do what? Catch it. Cellulose is the sugar that we find in plant cell walls. We're going to move forward with the rest of our tour of Food Line, and just to see where our macromolecules are all over the grocery store. So here we go. We're still in the starchy aisle, and just by way of reminder, we have a starch that also has two macromolecules in it. It has both carbohydrates and proteins. How about these lima beans for you? I don't know how you feel about beans, but beans, you're going to find carbohydrates and proteins. I said in beans, you're going to find carbohydrates and proteins. I'm going to say it one more time so you catch it. In beans, you're going to find carbohydrates and proteins. And so just to be mindful though, on your EOC, guess what you're going to mark that's found in beans? You're going to write proteins. So then, yes. Keep going. Moving forward with the rest of our tour in the Food Line on Church Street. We're doing a tour of macromolecules all throughout the grocery store, giving you an idea of where you can find them in your daily lives as we move forward with our lesson on all the four macromolecules. And you know where we're going to end up? We're going to end up with nucleic acids. But for now, we're going to stick with proteins. Since we picked up with beans, we're going to move forward with the macromolecule that we call proteins. Protein has a monomer of amino acids, and you're going to find them in just about anything that you find here in the grocery store. So I said that we were going to pick back up with our protein section, and what we need to remember about where we can find the macromolecule that's called proteins that has a monomer of amino acids. We're going to find that in the meat section of the store. So you see I'm holding this big old fat juicy piece of beef right here that contains what we call proteins, and the monomer, of course, of proteins is amino acids. And just by way of reminder that proteins have a function and role of building tissue and muscles. So guess what you're eating when you have beef? Tissue and muscle. Let's move down the meat aisle where we're going to find some more interesting things here that we love to eat. Look at this big old slab of ribs. Proteins. Proteins have a monomer of amino acids and a function of building tissue and muscle. And guess what you're eating? Well, how about this? Filet mignon. Proteins. What about, I wonder if they have some chicken feet in here. Guess what that has? Proteins. This whole meat section, and as you can see, this whole section is empty because of COVID-19. And guess what? There is a macromolecule that COVID-19 does not have, but we'll talk about that a little bit later as we move on in our tour through the food line when our macromolecules shot through until you drop. Let's go.